Thanks for inviting me along. And I apologise, I'm going to begin with a pun. To date a photograph, you actually have to date a photograph. In the sense you need to become acquainted with it, sometimes intimately. And I'm talking about images that have become divorced from their context. I'm not talking about hard copy photographs that come to you in their original form. Daguerreotypes, carte de visite, all that sort of thing. I don't know much about that, and I'm not concentrating on that. I'm talking about images that have been copied or digitised and have somehow floated free of their origins. Now we do know the date of that photograph. That's a school ball at Manurewa in 1967, and we could trace the exact date if we wished. But most of the photographs I'm going to show you come from our footprints database, which is a large collection of South Auckland images, and it's easily accessible on the Auckland Library's website. When I say easily accessible, you see that occasionally there are little glitches. And I didn't notice that glitch until I'd actually downloaded the screenshot. So I apologise for that. I should have presented a better image of Auckland Libraries. Now I'll just start with a couple of images that have been easy to date. These are photographs which haven't floated free of their context. This is a general store in Patumahoe, and we're pretty sure it's 1908 because on the back of the postcard, somebody's written home to their mother saying, "Look, Mum, this is me in Patumahoe," more or less, and it's dated in 1908. So the 1908 is a question mark because it could be earlier than 1908, but it couldn't be later. And in fact, anyway, that building burnt down in 1910. So that's an easy one. And this is slightly more complicated. This is the Manukau Harbour taken from the Mangere Bridge side of the harbour about 1905. Now you'd think we could actually trace who produced the FT series, but in fact we can't with certainty. So therefore we can't date it exactly. And that is the steamer Elsie, which was active from 1892 to 1914. So that doesn't help much either. But on the back of the postcard, it requires a penny stamp. So that dates it between, penny stamp, when were they? 1901 and 1907. That's when postcards required a penny stamp. So that's the date. So we're putting that at circa 1900. When I talk about circa, it's the abbreviation I think I love the most because it enables you to be approximate. Near, roundabout. You might see it as circa, CA, C dot, C, circ, CCA. All means the same thing. Probably best not to use CA dot and CCA dot because that breaks the grammatical rule of not adding a point to an abbreviation which ends at the same letter as the full word. Spacing is optional. Circa 1895, circa dot 1895, but probably best to put circa 1895. I always leave a space because some indexing programs actually don't pick up a date unless it's freestanding. So circa means approximate. In rough terms, 5 years either side. Or you can use a question mark instead if you're not sure. Some people put question mark, then the putative date. Others put the question mark after. That I use to indicate when we're not sure about the text. But anyway, that's a brief digression over the use of circa, which you'll see in many photographic sources and is an extremely useful expression. Now this is actually quite a well-known photo. I came across it in the Waiuku Museum Society collection, and in that format I came across it was a freestanding photo. It was a copy. I didn't know anything about it, but first lesson is just look at a photo carefully and you'll see the name down the bottom right-hand corner, Bear 21. It tells us it was taken by Daniel or Gerald Bear, probably Daniel Bear, two brothers who arrived in Auckland on the 11th of month of 1863. They rapidly headed both north and south taking photographs, and on the 19th of February 1864 they advertised a series of 34 views for sale in the New Zealand Herald. So that photograph must have been taken between November 1863 and February 1864. You will see it on the Auckland Museum database, dated 1863. I've dated it 1864 for this reason. This was the naval camp that was established before General Cameron invaded the Waikato, crossed the Mangere River to invade the Waikato in July 1863. The boats actually went down the river. The troops landed there. They established a redoubt just above the river called the Buckingham Redoubt. 5 days later, the Battle of Kairoa was fought on the ridge, and subsequently the Eglinton Redoubt was built on the top of the hill, or the top of the ridge. So this photograph was obviously taken when the theatre of war had moved south. Camps almost empty, palisades broken down, and if you either get out your magnifying glass or enlarge the photo, you'll see a pontoon bridge across the river just down on that side, just tucked away down there. That pontoon bridge was built in mid-October 1863. 4 weeks later was washed away by a flood, then was rebuilt. There are people working on the road across the river. So adding it all up, I would date that at January 1864. Now that's actually another fairly easy one. But what do you do when you get photos that have floated free entirely, that there's not even a name? You look at a number of things. You look at, and I'll go through these, I'll give you examples of these as I go through. You look at the context of the photo. You compare it with other photos, if you can find similar ones. You look at the location. You look at the buildings. You look at the people, the clothes, the hairstyles, the vehicles, which is one I love. And you look at the details. So here's St. Bride's Mauku, I've dated that as circa 1899. But in fact, there's nothing in that photo that indicates when it was. That photo is floated free of its context in the form it came to us. St. Bride's was built in 1861, and that's what it looks like today. And that's what it's looked like for almost the last 150 years. So how do we date that photo when we know nothing about the photographer and we know nothing about there's nothing to tell us in the physical photograph when it originated? We look at the context. See those graves there? Visit in 2015 will show you that at least 2 of them are still there. Now those 2 happen to be 1896. So therefore the photograph can't have been taken earlier than 1896. Go back, see between them. That was 1926. So therefore the photo can't have been taken later than 1926. So looking at other photographs of St. Bride's, looking at the tombstones and also looking at the height of the tree in comparison with other photographs, I've dated that tentatively at 1899, but maybe I should have put a question mark in as well. But sometimes I just aren't honest enough to do that. I like to give the illusion of certainty. So sometimes to date a photograph, you need to go back to where the photograph came from and see what the topography, what the surroundings, what the building is like. Now here's another one, a church ceremony in Te Kohanga, circa 1911, I say. Te Kohanga is on the southern side of the Waikato River. If you drive along halfway to Port Waikato, you'll find Te Kohanga Marae up in the hills. That is an Anglican church which was opened in 1911. So supposedly that would be the date of the opening of the church. But wait, you may not be able to see it from the back, but there is a covered monument, a veiled monument. So perhaps it was actually the unveiling of this particular monument, which you see on the left-hand side, which was to the honour of Mita Hita Kukatai, who died in May 1910. And in fact, the monument is still there today. So could that be a different date? Or could they have conflated the ceremonies of opening the church and unveiling the monument? We don't know, so therefore I've put that element of doubt there, circa 1911. Incidentally, that church is not that church. That church long ago fell down, and that is the old Catholic church from Manurewa, which was moved to the site to replace it. This is a photo of the Kentish Hotel in Waiuku, 1877. Has anyone been to Waiuku? You'll know that it's one of the most historic towns in New Zealand and the best preserved. A favourite of mine because I was born there and lived there for many years. Now here we come across one of the miracles of modern technology, which is called Papers Past, which is an online database of New Zealand newspapers. And I'm sure most people in the room have used Papers Past at some stage. The Kentish Hotel was originally built in the 1852. That's the original portion. This portion was built in 1877, and how do we know? Because the Auckland Star, on the 2nd of April 1877, reports, Mr. Sedgwick has of late considerably improved the appearance of the building and its surroundings. The work is nearly completed. The veranda and balcony only requiring the finishing touches. And that seems to be Mr. Sedgwick, but we're not sure about that. So, a little bit of research on Papers Past helps us date a lot of photographs that previously were mysteries. And in South Auckland we also have the advantage of having Manukau's Journey, which is a 2 million word chronological database which goes day by day through the history of South Auckland, recording important events such as the opening of buildings and other important occasions. So Papers Past has helped us date this photo. This photo was taken by George Wyman, and this is the ketch, not a scow, mind you, this is a ketch, okay? 2 masts, different configuration. Not that I know or care about my boats, but somebody told me this. So we know that's the ketch Elsie. And we know that we're pretty sure this is 1905 because and it's the Orurangi Creek, which we know from the physical environment. There's a landing place established at the Orurangi Creek in 1890, as the New Zealand Gazette tells us, and as the New Zealand Herald tells us, the Manukau Steamship Company's Ketch Elsie was launched on the 22nd of March 1904. So this photograph can't have been earlier than 1904 because the ketch didn't exist. And it can't have been much later than 1905 because in 1905 they built a bridge across the Orurangi Creek, and we have photographs of that. So therefore the boat service came to a close shortly afterwards because there was no need for it. People could get their produce to market much more easily by road. So fairly reasonably, out of the context, we can date that at 1905, and there's just another view. I told you I liked Waiuku. This is contrasting views of Waiuku 1907. This was actually published in the Auckland Weekly News on the 6th of June 1907. And if you see that, it says Waiuku in 1868, added by a later hand. Added, in fact, by the hand of the photographer, Stephen Tracy, who took that view in 1907 as a contrast. But that date is wrong. And you can tell because that building, Flexman's building, wasn't erected until 1871. So you can't have a building in a photograph before the building was built. That is 1852. That is 1866, the commercial hall. That we think is 1857. So the other buildings don't help, but Flexman's building does. Now, so don't believe everything you see in print. Now, if you go to Waiuku and stand on the hill above the river, you will still see the Kentish Hotel, although much more elaborate form, and you can still see Flexman's building. Those two buildings still survive. Here's another contextual photo. This is boys at Waipipi School, and we think it's circa 1910, but it could be earlier. The Defence Act, Amendment Act 1900 set up school cadets, so it can't be earlier than 1900. It's more likely to be 1910 because the Defence Act 1909 required all school cadets of the age of 12 and older to join the junior cadets. And these appear to be junior cadets. But I could be wrong there, and I probably should put a question mark there because some of these boys are quite clearly younger than 12, or they seem to me younger than 12. Butler's service station, Papatoeloe, 1936. Now, how can we be sure that we're dating this correctly? I haven't put a circa here, and the reason is, in those days, service stations were able to sell different brands of motor fuel. They weren't tied to one company, and that sells Super Shell, Plume Caltex, and Big Tree brands. Now, Super Shell went on the market in 1934. Texaco became Caltex in 1936, and Big Tree stopped production in 1937. So I think 1936 is pretty reasonable, and you'll forgive me if I don't put a question mark. Another contextual photo. This is the Picture Theatre in Manurewa, 1932. Now, I'm open to suggestions as to how you would date this photograph to almost to a week or a day. I'll give you a clue. That building was erected in 1920 and it burnt down in 1939. Talkies came to South Auckland, at first in Pukekohe, towards the end of 1929, and that is quite a shabby sign. There's a to let sign in the window of the home cookery, suggests the Depression years. So how are we going? Any other ideas? Cars? Power lines. Electricity came to Manurewa in 1925 or 26. Good on you, mate. See that? That advertises a film called, what was the film called? Bring 'em Home, Bring 'em Back Alive. Bring 'em Back Alive, RKO Studios, and all growling jungle adventures filmed by a gentleman called Frank Buck. Authentic sidelights on darkest Africa. That's the review. It was actually filmed in Manaia. Now this was first shown in Auckland in the Majestic Theatre on the 22nd of December 1932. It probably took a little while to get down to Manurewa, so I should probably date that at 1933, or put 32 question mark. Unfortunately, the Manurewa Theatre didn't advertise in the Auckland papers, so we can't give you the exact day, but it's possible if I went to the Franklin Times, I could. So, if you're old-fashioned like me, get out your magnifying glass. And if you're a little more modern, just blow the photo up digitally, and you'll find the details in it that help you. This is quite a well-known photograph, which has appeared in a number of books dated at 1900. That date is incorrect. 1908 is correct, because see those pipes there? Those are gas pipes, which are being laid in the sides of the street. And the first public gas lamps were lit in Otahuhu in March 1908. So that brings that photo 8 years forward from its conventional dating. Now, some people will tell you can date photos by clothes. Now, I'm a bit sceptical about this because perhaps you can for young people who like to be fashionable, but you certainly can't from older people, like myself, who are resolutely unfashionable. So I'm going to show you a few photographs and ask you to date them. First person with their hand up. 50? We think 1940. This is a frustrating one, but I think those are 1940s wartime economy dresses, and given the circumstances of the Manurewa at the time and the ages of the two women, Elsie and her sister, I think that's about 1940, but it's frustrating because there's a calendar somewhere up there and we can't blow it up. There it is. Frustrating, isn't it? Okay, next one. So keeping the books, circa 40. What date was that photo taken? Can you give it? 50's good. Somebody said 50s. It is. It's 1953. And how do I know? I'm cheating a bit here. That's me. That's my grandfather, and it was his birthday. So now you know. Family gathering, Papakura, 1953. Now, just out of interest, of the two older generations in that photo, my father's still alive, my mother's still alive, everyone else is dead. So get the details written down before people die.
Even the children?
No, I said the two older generations. There's 3 generations there. What date was this photograph taken?
60s.
Early 60s, very good. That's actually one of my favourite photographs. Gosh, I love the fag, the bottle of beer, the louche bodgy, the cowgirl, the hairstyles. Oh, look at those hairstyles. So good on you, 1964. What about this?
76.
Oh, 77, 76. It's a beauty contest and they're doing the performance stage of it. I mean, goodness knows what they're doing. I don't know. Okay. Or maybe they're a little old-fashioned in Howick, I don't know. When talking about clothes, you see what I mean when you look at that lady there, Mrs. P, the who ran the local nursing home in Otahuhu. She's wearing old-fashioned clothes, whereas her family is a little more swept up. So can anyone give me a guess as to... Oh, you've got the date of that photo, sorry. How did I date it at 1915? Was it by the clothes? See that boy there? Or girl? That's Daisy Greenwood. See that boy, that's Alfred Greenwood, born in 1913. That's Thelma Heald, born in 1913. And that's George Greenwood, born in 1914. So the births, deaths and marriages, if you've got the names and you've got young people there, because the younger a person, the easier it is to estimate the date. Like who would have a chance of estimating Mrs. P's date of birth? Or in fact, any of the back row. But if you've got kids there, you're in luck. So we can be pretty sure that that is 1915. But I would double check against the military records of the younger men. I haven't got around to it yet. But talking about clothes, could anyone guess the date of that from the clothes? This is 2 Anglican clerics in Howick. You're Canon Harry Mason and the Reverend Noble Dale Boys. The Reverend Boys was the vicar at All Saints from 1902 to 1925, and Harry Mason succeeded him from 1925 to 1930. The Reverend Boys has been described as yet the most aristocratic and autocratic features of any man I have ever known. His outlook could be summed up as, I am the vicar of this parish, do as I say. Yet underneath a somewhat stern exterior, he was a kindly man. He habitually wore a black clerical suit and a wide-brimmed clerical hat with a flat crown, which was the distinctive headgear of Anglican clergy in Victorian times. Nor was he ever seen without his clerical collar and stock. So his clothes are not going to help you. I put the date 25 because the parish was handed over in that date, and that's supposition, and I can't be absolutely sure, but it will have to do for the meantime until we can find a record of them being photographed together. I just put that in to show clothes don't always help. But vehicles always do. This is a tractor and plough in East Tamaki in 1920. Now the first demonstration of a motor plough in South Auckland was in Waiuku in 1917 on Henare Kaihaus farm at Tahuna, just outside Waiuku. But we can do better than that, because with the help of various encyclopedias of tractors, we can identify that as a American model Parrot 1225 that was first imported into Auckland or New Zealand in 1919. and last imported in 1923. So it can't be earlier than 1919. And the supposition of 1920 is not unreasonable, though it could have been later, of course. In fact, you can see that this is a little bit battered, so it probably had been used for a while. But the actual tractor, there was a demonstration of the tractor on a nearby farm in 1919. So, with the magic of the circa, we're saying that could be anywhere between it could be up to 1925. I wouldn't hazard a guess that it was later. Used cars. That car doesn't matter. And it doesn't matter because the photo can't be older than the newest car. And that's the oldest car. So we can forget that photo, that car, which is okay because I can't identify it. That's a Wolseley 1500, started production in 1960. That's a Ford Anglia 105E, started production the same year. That's a Ford Anglia 100E, earlier car. Ford Consul Mark I, started production in 1955, and that's a Vauxhall Velox, started production in 1957. So the photo can't be older than 1960. It's frustrating to me that that's the newest car in the picture, and I don't know what model it is.
What about the number plate?
Number plates, good story, and I've tried to track the number plates, but they're not distinctive enough to give me a range of dates. So I'm almost making a guess here, because instinct tells me that car is not earlier than 65. So sometimes you just can't be more precise than as precise as you'd like. This is a billiard saloon in Waiuku. Probably the same billiard saloon that I was told never to go into. I used to sneak down the alley and look through the window and see people doing wicked things like playing snooker. Those are spirit lamps, so it must be earlier than 1917 because electricity came to Waiuku in 1917. The clothes suggest pre-war, pre-First War, definitely. And I'm speculating here, but I think I've seen lithographs like that of Jack Johnson, the world heavyweight champion, from 1908 to 1915. So I'm putting this at circa 1910, but if anyone came up with any more evidence, I'd be happy to change it. So this is an interesting photo which came to us from the Papatoeloe Historical Society, and it had no identification of any kind. So how do we know what it is? We don't know for sure, but see these men? They're either jockeys or sulky drivers. Now, I think they're sulky drivers because of the pattern of dirt on their face. More dirt gets thrown up, obviously, and as a sulky driver, your face gets plastered with it and you come out with white goggles around your eyes. So we're obviously in a racing environment, which takes us to those distinctive uprights, which are the steward's stand at Potter's Paddock, Alexandra Park, as you can find from photos on Heritage Images, I think. Or was it in a racing book? I don't know. Anyway, that's the steward's stand at Potter's Park. And the windows, the uprights, and the just general configuration of the building tell you that. So I'm speculating here, and those two faces are familiar to me. I just can't place them. I know I've seen them somewhere in the South Auckland context. And by God, I will track them down sometime. But in the meantime, I'm saying that this is quite possibly members of the Otahuhu Trotting Club at Alexandra Park, Auckland, round about 1910. And here's a photograph which I regard as a dating failure. This photograph was taken by my mother in Waiuku, and she can't remember the date. That gentleman there is Mr. Harold Corner, a local commercial fisherman. We unkindly knew him as Seaweed. That was his boat, the Drifter. Now, he died in 1977, so it can't be later than that. That car, that's the newest car in the photo, is a Triumph 2000, and there weren't any in Waiuku before 1965. So we've got 1965, between 1965 and 1977. Unfortunately, the Kentish Hotel looked the same for about 100 years. And the Waiuku Borough offices looked the same. And there was a monument erected there in 1965 just behind those trees. But we can't see it, so that doesn't help. So that photo, for me, is a failure of dating. That's a guess. But it could be 5 years either way. But this one might help me date it, because there we are. They started reclaiming the estuary around the wharf in 1970. So going back, there's no signs of reclamation because that seems to be mudflat. So 1969 might be reasonable. But how do I know that this photo was taken on the 24th of November 1970? It's because that was me. You may notice bare feet, no helmet, no safety equipment, no safety clothes. That was what things were like in those days. So there you are. There's just a few examples of photographs we're dating now. You could well ask, yourselves, is this not just a parade of trivia? Does it really matter that photographs are dated to the day, the month, the year? I mean, maybe we could just throw them in our books or on our databases and say, circa this, circa that, 1940s, question mark. Or do what you sometimes see in local histories, old photo of Kentish Hotel. I think it matters to us as librarians, and I'm talking as a librarian here, because this is our point of difference, the quality of the metadata we produce. Everyone can throw photographs up on the internet now. We need a point of difference to justify our existence, but then maybe we don't need to.